everyone. My name is Irina. I'm an assistant director of admissions at Hunter College. Welcome to the Scholar event specific to the Roosevelt Scholars, the coolest program probably that we have at Hunter, at least in my opinion, and mainly because Elise is in charge of a mighty, mighty team. So today's program is going to tell you everything there is to know about the Scholar program, what it does, how it does it, but the best part is that you actually get to ask questions. And we actually have real Hunter students, not fake ones, didn't pay them to be here, right? Real scholars who will be able to answer your questions live. A few notes, if you have questions and you feel brave enough to ask them, keep them until the end. We'll have a live Q&A session. If you're a little bit more hesitant and you're like, maybe I don't want to necessarily come on the mic, there's a little chat feature in every Zoom, probably somewhere on the bottom of your screen. We have a little Q&A thing there. Put the questions in there and I will ask them for you live at the end of the session. But without further ado, Elise, they're all yours.
Thank you, Irina. It's so great to see all of you here today. And thank you for joining me for a conversation. This is one of the best days of the year for me, is getting to meet incoming Hunter students, accepted students. And, you know, I know you're making big choices going forward. Let me add that, you know, in addition to my role at Hunter as a professional and as an educator, I'm also a mom, and my son is a senior in college. So it wasn't that long ago that on a very personal level, my son and my family was making decisions like this too. So I know it's a lot and you're going to have a lot of good choices. So it's important to me to be super accessible to you and answer as many of your questions as I can today. And of course, you're going to want to hear from students. So, you know, the student experience is I think what's most compelling. So we have them here, but I want to emphasize that even after we're off this call, I want to, you know, welcome your questions, welcome you to reach out. If you have folks that want to join you on a call, absolutely fine. I know these are family decisions. So, you know, I know the communication is all with you, but, you know, I know that you're part of a bigger entity, right? That's making these decisions. So let me just start out by saying I've been at Hunter now for 12 years. I've been an educator for decades. I have a background in education, policy, and law. After I pursued my graduate education, I followed my husband to New York and we had our son, and then I reinvented myself as an attorney only to find myself very drawn to Hunter. So my grandmother, her sisters, her cousins, that whole cohort of my family came through this institution that is CUNY. So I have a really deep connection to the organization, and my own policy interests really focused on safety net issues for working people, pensions, healthcare, education. So the Hunter role speaks to me in so many ways, and it's really a delight and such a privilege to be able to work with our Roosevelt Scholars. So at Hunter, there's a lot of different opportunities, and the Roosevelt cohort is directed at students who have a commitment to civic engagement. So it's not about ideology, right? There's lots of ways to solve and address our public problems. What's important is the dialogue and the way that we speak to each other, the way we educate ourselves, and think about how to shape our future. So there's students from all different kinds of backgrounds, and we are interested in all different kinds of solutions, whether they're market-driven or government-based, or you know, anchored in the community. There's lots of ways to address that civic space, and in the span of our opportunities, we kind of touch very broadly on all of those. So let me just start out first by giving you a little background on Roosevelt House itself. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to you know, point to some online resources that you can go back to even after we're done talking. So I'm not going to use a PowerPoint. PowerPoint, you can't access that after we're done. But if I use the online resources, it means you can always go back to them and you know where they are. So let me go first to sharing. And Batya, I can see you. So I'm going to ask you, can you see the screen okay?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, thank you for that reassurance. I know we're all technically savvy here, but it's also good to make sure we're all on the same page. So let me just start out by saying Roosevelt House is the policy center of Hunter College, and it is the crown jewel of Hunter. Okay, so this is your house. It really is a house on
East
65th Street. You know, I'm going to talk a little bit, and then we'll invite questions just to keep things sort of smooth, because it's once we're screen sharing, it's hard for me to see where the questions are. So we will absolutely come back and welcome folks to jump in. So please bear with me, but we're going to want to all talk together. So let me just mention, so this house, this building, it's not just that, you know, Hunter named this building after FDR. It is that this house is from FDR. So this is Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New York City home that was left to the Hunter girls. Hunter used to be a women's school back in the day, so it was left to those young women. This was the home he came back to when he learned that he had been elected president. This is the house, quite literally, where the New Deal was planned. So it is part of the Hunter campus, and it has been refurbished as the policy center for Hunter College, and it's the center for so much activity. So there's been a number of really prominent leaders that have come through Roosevelt House. So Bill Clinton has visited Roosevelt House. The Dalai Lama has visited Roosevelt House. Ban Ki-moon, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, has been here. So it really has a presence in New York City. And in addition to you know, drawing in these notable leaders, it's also the center for regular programming on a weekly basis. So just this week, you probably all had received the invitation to the discussion among the Manhattan Borough President candidates, so you could get a sense of who they are. The House sponsors a series this year on race and social justice, covering everything from workplace microaggressions to policing. It's currently hosting a series on Audre Lorde, who is a notable poet and also Hunter alumna. But there have been book talks just these past few weeks, including Bella Abzug, who is a leading feminist and New York City Congresswoman, Obamacare, FDR's Black Cabinet, and a discussion with Thomas Daya about his new book on 4 decades of New York City urban development. And coming up this Friday, you should have received an invitation to What is the Democratic Commons, right? Which is going to focus on the way we interact with each other and dialogue develops. So there's just so much that happens at the house, and it's an exciting place. I'm just going to share a couple of pictures here so that you could see it's a historic landmark, and there are a lot of elements that have been retained from the original house. Once we are back on campus and we're moving towards a more normal time in New York, now that everyone's getting vaccinated, we're optimistic that, you know, things are slowly going to return to normal. We'll be able to go back to, you know, having tours of the house. So when we're not having classes and events here, it's a house that's open to the public. People can come. You could come with your family and take a tour. It's very beautiful. This space is one of the libraries. So there's 2 libraries at the house, part of the original homes, and the Sarah Library, there's the FDR Library and the Sarah Library, they're parallel to each other, is open for students to study on a regular basis. So when I said, this is your house, I really meant this is your house. You're going to be very, very welcome there. In addition to all of that sort of programming and events around the house, there's also other opportunities. And one of the things I'm very dedicated to is helping you to achieve additional fellowship and funding opportunities. And the house is a way to do that. So for instance, there's the Eva Caston Grove Fellowship, where you will have the chance. You have to apply and be accepted, of course, but our Roosevelt Scholars are the first group that they will turn to when they look for great applicants. So Grove gives you the opportunity to study with a local New York thought leader and work on a research project as part of a cohort, as part of another group. And there's funding associated with that. And in addition to Grove, there's another opportunity at Roosevelt House called JFU, where also, again, more funding, and there's paid internship associated with that. And that's specifically for students who are interested in policy as well as nonprofit advocacy. So there's just so much happening at the house, and it's a very, very rich venue for students to be engaged with. Students will frequently ask me about, when they're thinking about Hunter, they'll frequently ask me about courses, right? Because when students think about school, one of the first things they think about is, well, where am I going to be sitting and what am I going to be taking? So I want to turn from Roosevelt House to talk about that for a minute, but I'm actually going to end up circling back to Roosevelt House. So you'll see this is kind of a bookended conversation. So Roosevelt Scholars can have any major at Hunter. So many of you will be social scientists, because that's sort of the nexus that tends to intersect commonly with interests in civic space. But in addition to social science, things like political science, sociology, economics, we also have students who are environmental studies majors. We have urban studies majors. We have students who are focused on women's studies or the Black and Latinx experience in America, right? So there's lots and lots of different ways to be a Roosevelt Scholar. Nobody has a lock on that. When you get to Hunter, there will be what's called a freshman block. And what that means is that when you register, you will move through some of your classes with other Roosevelt Scholars. And this gives you a chance to really know each other and build community as you learn together. And so it's a way to make a big school have a smaller place, right? So you get all the offerings of CUNY, you get all the offerings of Hunter, but you're very anchored in community, and you always have a place where people are invested in you and you feel connected. So the freshman block is designed to help you meet your Hunter requirements while simultaneously sort of selecting out for the best set of skills for the common interests that you share. So freshman year, you'll be in Philosophy 104, which meets your individual and society requirements, English 120, you'll take your math requirement. There's a first year seminar that'll give you sort of teach you the ropes of being in school and, help you feel comfortable being independent. And you'll take Political Science 110 with me. And I'll have you in class for your whole first year. So first semester, it'll be for Political Science 110. And second semester, it'll be for a policy entrepreneurship class. And it's a way that I get to know you really well. And I will be your faculty mentor throughout your time at Hunter. But the fact that I've had that chance to be in the classroom with you for a year means that our relationship has a really strong foundation that we can build on. In the spring, as I mentioned, you'll be with me again, and then you'll take Economics 100. And we've added media to 11. So we swapped out a different requirement. We used to have an additional English requirement, and this year students instead are going to be taking media to 11, which Hunter has recently added as a way to fulfill some of those requirements. So it's news literacy in a digital age. Students are going to get to learn about fake news and how it is that conspiracy theories develop. And it's taught by Cecil McCarthy, who is a former award-winning news journalist. I mean, she's just fantastic. And Cecil is actually changing her course from the fall to the spring because she's so excited to be able to teach Roosevelt Scholars. So when we approached her about having this dedicated section of her class, she said, well, I usually teach it in the fall. I said, well, you know, the fall's pretty set for them. And she's like, let me talk to my chair and move it to the spring. So it's not only that you are getting this really wonderful professor, but it speaks to how excited folks at Hunter are to have Roosevelt Scholars in their class. So let me just say that, you know, this is sort of the map for freshmen, but if there is something else that you need to do because of your academic path, let's say you have some, you know, particular professional goal that you're trying to meet, and you have a set of requirements that you must take freshman year at a certain time because they're going to open the door to the next class. The number one thing that guides both me as well as our advising team is the priority of the student. So for instance, you know, if there's a student who's pre-med and there's a set of requirements that they need in order to move to the next level of classes, prerequisites that they must get out of the way, we are always going to recognize the priority of the student's goals. So I want to emphasize that, you know, the course map is here, and students are, it's anticipated that they're going to join us for that freshman block, and it's a way for you all to be connected. But the student priorities are what's going to govern us. And then by the time you get to sophomore year, it's going to be expected that you will be, you know, taking your foreign languages. But again, you can have any major at Hunter, and after that freshman block, everything is open, you know. And so I meet with students, and you have academic advisors that are also going to be able to guide you through the registration process and the nitty-gritty of navigating Hunter. But your priorities are going to be our priorities. And at this point, I'll also just mention that these requirements for Hunter, right? So it's the freshman block, but they meet the requirements for Hunter. They also happen to meet the requirements for the public policy minor at Roosevelt House. So you are not required to take the public policy minor or the human rights minor at Roosevelt House. But if you are interested in those programs, by dint of having completed the freshman block, you are well on your way to pursuing these programs. And there's a minor in both human rights and public policy, and there's also a certificate, which, if you're interested, gives you the chance to write a capstone paper and develop expertise and research that's a little bit more in depth. So as I mentioned, these are not required programs, but they're often of interest to our students. So that is why I mention them here. So why don't we take a moment, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other again, and just ask our current Roosevelt Scholars to jump in to see if there's anything you wanted to share about the house or classes. So with us today, we have Batya, Nolan, and Dave, and whoever wants to jump in first, I'm going to defer to you.
Awesome. I can go first then. So yeah, just I think Professor Jaffe did an incredible job capturing what like the first year really looks like for Roosevelt Scholars. But just to talk about it from the student perspective, it honestly taking classes in the Roosevelt House and like the Roosevelt House just as a place within Hunter College. Honestly, being a Roosevelt Scholar, having that direct connection and really treating it like the home base, we like to call it, is has been fundamental to my experience at Hunter College. So I'm a junior right now, so I have gotten to experience like in-person events and things like that, and it is insane some of the incredible thought leaders that come into this space and are excited to speak to not only Roosevelt Scholars but to students and sort of like the community within the Roosevelt House. We had our own private lunch with Congressman Gerald Nadler, who was the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, right during the impeachment trials. And so having the chance to have a private lunch with the man running the impeachment in the United States is like a very like fascinating experience to have. But that's something that we were given access to as Roosevelt Scholars. Like the Roosevelt House had the event, and then Gerald Nadler in his speech said, "Okay, Roosevelt Scholars, please go upstairs, and I'll join you for lunch." And so it was like it's like an incredible experience to have things like that catered to really bolster your education at Hunter, and like really Roosevelt House and like the opportunities there. I'm minoring in both public policy and human rights because of how much I love the Roosevelt House, and I've been taking advantage of the opportunities that it affords. It really is the crown jewel in many ways, just like Professor Jaffe said. So I ditto everything that she said.
And just to add on to what Dave said about the freshman block, I think being able to take classes with a set group of people during your freshman year, where Hunter's a very big school and it could be very overwhelming, being in classes with the same people over and over, people with common interests as you, is really very, very helpful. And you form a community of people that could help you and that you'll see in future classes because you're probably going to be in similar majors. And you're able to find this small community within this ginormous school, which really helps you with all 4 of your years of college.
Yeah, going off what Batya said, it's very easy to make friends in the Roosevelt cohort because freshman year, you're taking a lot of classes together. We took philosophy together. I think it was the first time I met Batya was philosophy. I turned around and was like, "Hey, Roosevelt." So philosophy, freshman block, freshman seminar. And yeah, you're just like always together. And then after freshman year, you can make your own classes, but you tend to, ask your friends what classes are you taking, and you tend to take classes together. And then Dave did a great job of talking about, the prestigious leaders and thinkers that come to Roosevelt House. But there's also space for students to have their own events. I remember before COVID, we got to watch some of the Democratic debates in one of the spaces there, and there's always free food. There's always pizza. So you get fed very well as a Roosevelt. So yeah, you make a lot of friends. There's a great community. Roosevelt House is great. That's all I have to add.
Those are important points. So free food, that's always good. If you're going to be in Manhattan, it's good to know that you don't have to go very far. And also, one of the things I do see among the students are these incredible friendships. And even though this year we have been virtual, our freshman class is incredibly close knit, and they're really excited about getting back to campus too. So, I think, the fact that there is so much that is shared among the group before you even get to campus, and that you have numerous shared events both in the classroom and outside of the classroom, really helps to weave together a very nice community. I also wanted to just add that in addition to these events at the house, that Roosevelt Scholars participate in regular programming exclusively for Roosevelts, both on campus and in the city. And although they've been virtual, we're hoping to get back to our regular routine soon. So the scholars will attend meetings of local community boards, of city council hearings. They'll visit local agencies and organizations. And even though we can't do that in person right now, on Friday next week, I was looking down because I'm looking at the calendar. Friday next week, we're going to be at the New York City Housing Preservation and Development Office of Neighborhood Strategies. So if you want to join us for that, you should have gotten that invitation, but that'll be, really amazing. And, housing during the pandemic has come under a lot of pressure. So it's going to be a very timely conversation. We also have all kinds of discussions about careers. So we'll bring in Hunter alums and friends of the institution to talk about their work. And this year we had a conversation about criminal justice careers, non-lawyering criminal justice careers. So my other hat is that I direct the pre-law program. And for those of you who are interested in becoming attorneys, there's a whole lot of resources there too. And so for my Roosevelts, no, because I know they have plenty of lawyering resources and I make sure they all are aware of what they are, our Roosevelt events will tend to focus on other ways to engage that civic space, right? Because there are many, many ways to do that, whether you want to run a nonprofit or go into social work, or you might be a scientist who, sees a way to develop an alternative business strategy for, for energy, right? There's lots of ways to engage that space. So we've also dealt with issues relating to tax and economic fairness, a panel on immigration issues, and talking to folks who deal with all kinds of dimensions of those communities. In addition to career-oriented panels, we also will have events with graduate schools. So Columbia SIPA was here in the fall talking about admissions and their offerings. The Georgetown McCourt School of Public Policy was here talking about networking skills for building your career. So it gives you a chance to get to know the folks at that institution, even before you're thinking of applying. So you're getting a sense of, what would that career path look like? In addition to the organizations that I will plan, including things like Lunch with a Leader, where our president will invite in local leaders in New York City, like Commissioner Lorraine Cortez Vasquez or Mitch Silver. There's also a lot of student-led activity. And I think that's one of the things I've been so gratified to see happening in the Roosevelt group, is how we have a leadership council that's been very vibrant. So we've had student groups go out and pursue local community service activities like Books Through Bars, which will provide reading material to inmates, or do service at the food bank in Harlem, at the community kitchen and pantry. There'll be an interesting museum event, and a handful of students will just decide, like, let's meet up at 1 o'clock and we'll go see, this exhibit about workers in the city. There was not long ago, there was an interesting program on Chinese exclusion at one of the museums that students had the chance to take advantage of. And also there's our fortnight dinner, where in conjunction with our prestigious awards office, we feature the research of our own students, right? And it serves as a mentoring opportunity. So it's not just that the presenters have the chance to practice and develop their skills, but the students who are listening also get to have the sense of, how did this more senior student get to that point? And I know that our Leadership Council is going to be planning a podcast to welcome all of you. So, they've just been really a vibrant source of a lot of energy. And before I turn this back over to the students to talk about their experience, I just want to mention a couple of other events and opportunities that Roosevelt Scholars have. So in addition to those president's events that I mentioned in passing, where our own President Raab will invite in leaders in New York City to come speak with us. We also do an annual roundtable in Albany, where students will get to literally, sit in a conference room with lawmakers and talk about the current issues of the day. And I'm just trying to find the right image as I'm sharing my screen. Oh, there we are. So here the students are in the New York State Assembly on the floor. Dan Court, who's one of the assembly members, introduced the students on the floor, came over, was talking to students, chit-chatting, asking them what their day had been like. And it's really amazing to be able to be so close to where the action is. And every year when we go up, it's really hard to get them to leave that chamber. And we've been very lucky because sometimes you can be in the chamber, and it might not be a busy day for the assembly, but we usually go at the end of the session. So there's a lot of hot issues that have built up by the time we get there, and so we've been able to see a lot of great conversations. And in addition to those activities, we also have service trips to both Detroit and Mississippi. So it might be that we plan service trips to other cities looking ahead, but until now, we've focused on Detroit and Mississippi, where Jackson, Mississippi, which captures a lot of different dimensions of urban problems, whether it relates to class or work or race, all sort of manifest in that place. So when students have gone to Detroit, they've worked at Alternatives for Girls, which helps to provide assistance for at-risk youths. They've worked at Eastern Market in an economic development capacity, helping to alleviate a food desert. They've worked with the Charles H. Wright Museum in African American history, which serves as a community center, which does a lot of outreach to the public. So that has been a very rich experience for students as well, both for their own information as well as for building community. And students have also gone, as I mentioned, to Jackson, Mississippi. And this little summary is actually on the Roosevelt Scholars website. If you want to go back and take a look at it after we're off this call, but they were at the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, they were at the ACLU, they were at a direct service provider, actually, helping to make sure that there was, delivery of food and accessibility of essential essential resources, and that's called Stew Pot. It took me, I had to refresh my memory, and so all kinds of organizations that really touch the lives of people in different ways, right? So you could imagine being very invested in government and wanting to talk to folks that address problems in that way. You can imagine being interested in nonprofit or community organizations, or from the business side wanting to address these issues. There's not one universal way to talk about our public space. And so these additional resources, things like our service trips and these other events that we organize for Roosevelt's, try to give students some of that exposure as well. And let me step back and let our students share some thoughts.
Yeah, I can chime in again specifically about the service trip because in my freshman year, I had never been beyond the tri-state area, and so here I was finding myself in the middle of Jackson, Mississippi, the last place I would have ever imagined myself, on a fully funded trip with other Roosevelt scholars, navigating one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to, and really I can honestly say, having being like I mentioned, I'm a junior now. That trip to Mississippi has been one of the most formative experiences of my college career, specifically in the way that you get dropped right into the middle of American history. You're walking through the SNCC headquarters, which is like the home base of some of the nonviolent organizing that was happening in Mississippi. I got to work at the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum briefly, working on archival research and holding like the documents of Martin Luther King Jr.'s original speech notes and Fannie Lou Hamer's original speech notes, right? And working to investigate some questions while we were there. And I got to actually like I was looking at a photo in the museum, and like one of the cleaning staff walked by and said, "Oh, look, that's me." And I got to meet like a Mississippi Freedom Rider from the 1960s, like right there, like as I was like in the middle of the South, learning about the legacy of Southern civil rights. And it was honestly like really questioned, and pushed me to think about race and class and all of these different ways to organize around public policy in a really formative way, and really that trip also being in the middle of Mississippi is like a crazy thing to be able to say, especially as students in New York City, right? And so and it's another example of an opportunity that Roosevelt scholars and are specifically catered with, and sort of geared towards. And I like just to piggyback off of what Batia said, right? All of my best friends are Roosevelt scholars because of how many classes and how many experiences, trips, Albany visits, and things like that you get to really share with your fellow friends. And like Professor Jaffe had mentioned, it has opened up in terms of what classes you can take after your like freshman year block. But it is very true that you try to take. I have tried to take a class, at least one class, with my fellow Roosevelt friends from my cohort every single year, and we haven't missed a semester yet. And so it's honestly like an incredible experience, being able to experience not only New York City but the country with your peers.
I'm a year behind Dave, but I also went to Jackson. And again, it was like probably the best experience I've had, not just at Hunter, but in my young life, I would say. Because you're there with your best friends, number one. It's fully fun. You're there with your best friends. And again, it's like the history that you just find yourself immersed in. They asked everybody before we went, they're like, what's your idea of the South? Like, what do you think of when you think of the South? And it was crazy to see how when we came back, everybody's answer changed because you think you know about the South and you go to the South and you don't really know anything about the South and you see the work people are doing, and it's pretty amazing. I got to work at the ACLU when I was there, and it was like I'm just sitting at a table with three of my friends and some ACLU lawyers. We're talking about a civil rights bill they're trying to get passed and how they want to advertise it to the state legislator. And we got like a private tour of the state capitol building, and we meet all these other amazing people doing amazing work. We met Judge Reeves, who's this amazing federal judge in Mississippi, who's worked on some incredible cases and delivered incredible impassioned speeches. And he literally sits there with you for an hour, 2 hours, and talks to you individually, talks to every single one of us who's on the trip. And it's just an amazing experience. I can go on for hours about Mississippi. It was the best experience I could have ever imagined. And I recommend that when you guys come to Hunter, you sign up and try to get on that trip. Or also Detroit. I haven't been to Detroit, but I imagine it's very similar. So I would say do that 100%.
Yeah, so I didn't get the opportunity to go on a trip yet, so maybe I'll see all of you on a different trip whenever they open up again. But from all I heard from my friends who were on these trips, it's an amazing, amazing experience, and we're so lucky that Roosevelt Scholars provides this for us.
Nolan, you're working on a project with another Roosevelt scholar. I was wondering if you wanted to talk about how that came about.
Yeah, so Annabelle Greg you'll probably hear her name a ton when you're at Hunter because she's amazing and she's doing amazing things. She has a nonprofit called WIC, the Water Insecurity Correction Coalition. And I'd always, you know, she's in the cohort and I became friends with her and I was like, I want to help out. So I started working with her. She promoted me, which was cool. So now I'm the advocacy director with her organization. And we've kind of like, you know, built it up from the ground together. I mean, it's all her doing, but I've worked with her. And we have a team of interns now that are nationally around the country. It's like a national team because it's all virtual. So we work on legislation work. We're like advocating for bills in New York right now that we're gonna, you know, protect people's access to clean water. Working in Georgia as well. And we have a podcast. We have our own podcast separate from the Roosevelt podcast. We have our own podcast that we make once a month and we talk about issues. And yeah, the team is growing like every day. We're doing interviews next week to grow the team. And yeah, I mean, that's like the type of thing that you're getting when you come to Roosevelt because everybody is so smart and so driven and everybody's doing something. So it's as simple as, you know, having a conversation with your friend in class about what they're doing and saying, oh, can I help? And obviously they're going to say yes. And yeah, there's just so many opportunities that come with the friends that you make through Roosevelt.
So I know we can continue to chat and I could, you know, ask the students to share more, but Irina, I wonder if there are questions that have come up in the chat, or do we want to see if there are folks who want to jump in?
Answering all the questions. They inevitably come up with the answers that you're doing. So keep going.
It's good to know we're on track.
Exactly.
Dave, I know you and the Leadership Council have a podcast planned for this year. Did you want to share some of that?
Sure, yeah. So I'm part of the Roosevelt Leadership Council as well that helps sort of craft events by Roosevelt's for Roosevelt scholars. And one of the things that sort of we'll be working on that will be ready in time for hopefully when everyone here matriculates to Hunter College and signs up to be a Roosevelt Scholar. We're working on a podcast to sort of talk a little bit more about like our experiences, create an opportunity for just other Roosevelts to it's going to be 100% Roosevelt Scholar driven. So the hosts will be all like rotating different scholars from different years. The guests we invite will be other Roosevelt scholars, and it'll be a chance to share experiences kind of like we are right now, tell you maybe what professors you should take, tell you where you should go to eat at Hunter, like those like nitty gritty like student life aspects, but also talk about like the issues that matter to us the most as civically engaged students, what we're looking into, what we're tapped into, the issues. Maybe we'll talk about the upcoming New York City elections that are happening this summer, right? Lots of issues that are happening. So talking about all of those things in a Roosevelt Scholar space. But most importantly, we're hoping for the first episodes to be more so like a welcome and like a guide, like 101 type podcast for all of you new Roosevelt scholars that will be joining us, and maybe even last year scholars that could benefit from navigating what virtual or in-person experiences look like at Hunter College and all of the amazing opportunities that are here to really grab at, right? And so another thing I would mention is the Roosevelt House itself also houses the Human Rights Program and the Public Policy Program, like Professor Jaffe mentioned. And these programs are really have been integral to lots of Roosevelt scholars as well, and shaping their experiences here at Hunter. And these programs also have trips. I know a few of my friends in the Human Rights Program have been to Kathmandu, Nepal, and they spent, so it's international as well, some of the trips offered through the Roosevelt House in particular. So I just wanted to mention that as well, and hopefully all of these things are things we can share within the podcast, and maybe sometimes one of you can hop on the podcast as well, and or be a host of the podcast. So we're really hoping for this to be a collaborative space that is for Roosevelts and by Roosevelts.
So one of the things that I've really learned this year, and I think what it's interesting, that it's not just that students learn from professors, it's that professors learn from students too, is, there's been sort of a silver lining to this pandemic. So on the one hand, I think everyone is really, really eager to get back to campus, to get back to before times. I mean, there's just no question that we all want to be present again at East 68th Street, and we're getting so much closer really fast, which is fantastic. But in this past year where we've been remote, I think we've also learned a lot. And, and I think that there's going to be technology that we've adapted that that's not going to go away. So like realizing like, oh, podcasts are a really great way for us to communicate even when we're not all in the same room, and to stay connected with each other even when we're not walking past each other in the hall. So we want to absolutely go back to sitting around a conference room table eating pizza, but staying connected through podcasts even when we're not in the same room is such a great feature of technology, right? And before we were kind of pushed into this unusual situation, I don't know if we were necessarily thinking as creatively as we are now. And similarly, the use of video communication. I think, on the one hand, I love the serendipity of students being able to like walk by my door, and everybody knows where my office is at Hunter, because it's right over, there's two bridges that connect the east and west building. So if you're near a bridge, it's very easy for people to find you. And my office is right near the 7th floor bridge. So I'm kind of like in the midst of all the foot traffic, and students at any time, they can kind of like walk by, poke their head in, or I'll pass them in the hallways, or we'll see each other in the cafeteria. And I really miss that. I miss the serendipity of running into you not planned, right? So right now in this virtual world, we have to set up a time and connect, and we don't have the chance to just cross paths or talk while we're grabbing the pizza, but that is coming. But in the meantime, I do think that having this way to connect virtually is good, because I also realize that there are going to be students who come to Hunter and are going to live on campus in the dorms, and that's great. I think students really like being in the city and they enjoy it. At the same time, if you're going to live at home where you don't have to pay rent, well, that's really great, right? And so at Hunter, our students have this really big diversity of experience, and they're spread out over a geographic space that's 5 boroughs. So Hunter is like the center of all of those bicycle spokes where we come together. And I'm just realizing what a great tool Zoom is, when we think about like, well, what if we want to have, a conversation about, a particular policy issue, or we just want to brainstorm together. The fact that we don't have to physically be in the same room means that, that commute, someone doesn't have to worry about that commute home for an hour in January in the dark, and so I think being able to make use of this technology is really, really fantastic. And I also just want to add too, as I'm just thinking about, the ways that Hunter students kind of live and navigate the city, it makes you very well prepared for life. So one of the things that I see in students as they take the initiative, as they make opportunities for themselves, you have to have a lot of moxie to do that. And our students at Hunter really do. You get up every day, you get on the train. Even if you live in the dorm, you got to get on the train to get up to your classes. So you're really living in the world as adults. And I can say to you that it not only makes you really prepared for internships and other opportunities, because our contacts in the city, like people always are looking for Hunter students, but also when you get to graduate school, they love you. They love Hunter students because you're really, really prepared, and you understand what it is to live in the world in a way that's different than somebody who's maybe been very sheltered. So, living in the city, I will say, can be a little bit of a challenge because you have to juggle and you have to navigate and you have to, be very present for yourself. But it makes you so prepared for life. And I think it's also really fun because the city is so vibrant, and it's exciting, to be here now that, the movie theaters are opening, and we know that we're getting so much closer to being able to reclaim all of those, arts venues and those spaces that haven't been as accessible to us, like restaurants, that, we're going to be able to get together in those spaces soon. So it's exciting to see the fall coming.
Elise, we did get one question, so if that's okay, we're kind of rounding off the presentation. Students are asking, a few different students have asked this, how big is the Roosevelt Scholar Program altogether, all 4 years? And do you get to interact between classes? I know Nolan and Dave are in different age, not age, but different years, but they working on projects together. I know Batya said the same thing. But students are asking, like, how much is it encouraged? Are there projects? What happens after the freshman year sort of seminar?
So we love for students to interact with each other. And while you're building community with each other as freshmen, we're also making sure that you're building bridges with the, I want to say, upperclassmen. I don't know that students necessarily think of themselves that way because they're just, you're all Roosevelts. But so we'll expressly bring students in to, mentor, right? But I think mentor suggests a kind of, dynamic of high to low that I don't think students feel, but support, that there's a lot of sort of intergenerational support among students. So at the beginning of every spring term, we'll bring in the upper level class students to talk about their experiences with campus activities and campus involvement, and also as a way to invite students to be involved. So you don't have to wait to run into somebody and say, hey, what are you working on? But we bring the students to you to say, hey, this is what we're working on. All of the events that we host are for everyone. So you get the opportunity to run into each other and see each other. Those trips that you heard about to Mississippi are not right. So we don't necessarily recruit from freshman year for those trips because we want to give you time to get used to Hunter, because the trips do sort of carve out a chunk of time that you need to be ready for. But sophomore, juniors, and seniors all get mixed up together on those trips. So there's a lot of opportunity for folks to have that serendipity of seeing each other, and also we specifically structure some of those spaces. So both at the beginning of the spring term and the beginning of the fall term. So one of the things Dave was referring to was this podcast where the upper level classmen want to tell you how to navigate Hunter, but if possible, right, what we do in regular times, right, I'm putting that in quotes, in regular times, we have our annual kickoff dinner. Every semester we have our annual kickoff dinner where everyone is invited, and it's about interacting with our new group of freshmen so that people have the chance to get to know each other and cohere. And there is a LinkedIn group, and so some of you might not know what LinkedIn is, but it's like a professional networking platform. And there is a Roosevelt Scholars LinkedIn group where everyone can talk to everyone. So you don't have to know about some secret chat group or where to find each other. You're all there and you can all reach out to each other. But then there are lots of sort of natural connections that happen, and people do have their own like text and WhatsApp. And there's about 30 students a year. So there's about 120 of you altogether. So it's big enough that there's some variety among you, but small enough that you feel like, you have a community of people that are your, it's sort of like your place inside of Hunter, which, can be a big place, but also really exciting, because if you're bigger, it just means there's so many more opportunities and departments and paths you can walk.
Thank you so much, Elise. One more question came in for Dave, actually. Dave, you mentioned you're doing like 9 different things on campus. Students are asking, how are you managing to do so much as a scholar and doing the human rights program and public policy program and everything else? How do you manage your time?
Yeah, sure. I can answer that question. I think so. I'm one of those people that are so guilty because I just love taking advantage of as many opportunities as possible, and because Hunter has so much available, I've been keeping myself busy over the past few years. And even now in the virtual setting, just like Professor Jaffe said, the opportunities haven't slowed down at all. They have increased actually. So I really enjoy participating and really engaging in everything. And I think in terms of as incoming freshman students, I would recommend like in a more literal sense, Google Calendar is like one of my favorite tools like on this planet, because you can like it's been easy in the Zoom setting to like schedule like meetings and classes and then just pop the Zoom link right there, so you never have to like hunt it down, and then you just like block your time as much as you can. That has really been like a saving grace for me. In like the more literal sense, like in terms of like tools and applications, also like Notion is a great tool that I use a lot for like task management. But in terms of like actual like time management overall, I think prioritization is really important, and really like weekly setting your goals and priorities, like understanding like class and like your academics comes first over everything else, and really like making sure you're carving time to pay attention to that. But then once you put in that hard work and dedicate your time, then you have all that other time to dedicate to exploring your interests, to participating in clubs and activities at Hunter, and doing all that other fun stuff. And so it's all about like just checking in with yourself and checking in with your priorities weekly. And then like another like great piece of advice that a professor gave me about 2 years ago that I've been trying to do is like, if you can do something under 60 seconds, like just do it. And then like that saves you so much time. So like if there's an email you've been putting off like for a long time, or if like your jacket is on the floor, right, and you're like putting it off to pick it up, if you can do it under 60 seconds, just try to do it. And then like that helps and builds like habits of really managing your time well. And so I by no means have I mastered time management. That's not what I'm trying to say either, but I think that that's helped me be able to participate and engage with so many of the different resources on campus.
Thank you, Dave. The next question is, I think for all students, I think this is a really good question to kind of round off the whole session. Students are asking, what made you decide on coming to Hunter and being a Roosevelt Scholar? What sort of was the tipping point? Why Hunter? Dave, I'm gonna pick on you since you were last.
Sure. Yeah, this is another excellent question. I think when I was really thinking about what I wanted from an institution and what I was really hoping for in terms of my college experience, I was hearing like thinking back to my time as a college as a high school senior, like as I had a lot of great choices, fortunately, in front of me to choose like what institution I wanted to attend, and I think the Hunter College and the Roosevelt contingency with Hunter College really attracted me almost immediately because of like all of these different reasons that you heard from Professor Jaffe today, and us sharing. But like what really like drew me to this program was honestly the cohort aspect of it, because what I kept hearing and what I was kept like fearful, what I kept being fearful of was what college looks like in terms of experiencing it, and I definitely did not want to experience it alone as one student amongst thousands of students. And so getting accepted into like the Roosevelt Honors like program within Hunter, I already kind of knew that I was like guaranteed to be at least within a community. And so I really ultimately decided that community was a really important aspect to me for my college experience. And I'm so lucky that I chose the correct community, and that there was such a strong sense of community. I remember one of my someone I met that was like a scholar like leader from Roosevelt on the day of my orientation. I'm now friends with them, like super like close friends with them. We're taking classes together, and they're like a year ahead of like a year above me. So like this intergenerational community aspect is really present here at Hunter. And I was really like, it's insane how I was able to pick up on that, even just not being a student, but then just like by virtue of becoming a student, it confirmed for me all those things that I was looking for from an institution. So that community ties aspect of it really was what set it off for me to join Hunter College.
Thank you, Dave. Nolan, how about you? Why Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, Hunter wasn't really on my radar until I applied. And then when I started learning about Roosevelt and when it had to offer, I just knew like right away this is where I wanted to be. I think some of the major points for me that made me say like, this is it, was the Roosevelt House, the programs they offer there. And again, like Dave said, the community, it's big enough that, you know, you're not like, you don't feel like you're in high school, but it's small enough that you're able to make friends and socialize without this big, you know, fear lingering where it's like, am I going to make friends? Because it's small enough that everyone there wants to make friends. Everybody in college wants to make friends. That's like a big thing I've learned is like, just say hi and like everyone wants to make friends. So Roosevelt provided like the perfect space for that. There's so much opportunity, like you really don't realize until you get there, but whatever you're interested in, somebody has a connection, you'll be able to find an opportunity for yourself. The speakers we get to listen to, the people we get to meet, it's like I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I just say socially, because I know like social life matters to a lot of people. You're in New York City. It's a lot of fun. I lived in the Brookdale campus up until COVID, and like it was so much fun. I mean, we worked Monday through Friday, but then the weekends, you know, we were out doing things, exploring New York City. Some of my best friends I met at Brookdale as well, and again, Roosevelt's lived at Brookdale with me. So yeah, I would just say that Roosevelt combined everything I wanted. It was academic, it was work opportunity, and social life. So everything rolled up into one. It was perfect opportunity, and I'm so glad I'm here.
Thank you, Nolan. Batya, not the last one, not the least for sure. So go ahead. Why Hunter?
No. So for me, Hunter was a very personal choice. The reason why I came here, my mother is an alum of the school, so I was always very connected to it. I did a summer program the year before college called the Bella Abzug Leadership Program at Hunter. So I always felt like Hunter was my home, and I felt like I had a place within the Hunter community. And then when I got accepted into the Roosevelt Scholars Program, I'm like, wait, this is where I really fit in. It's not this huge school that's Hunter. It's this little community of people who are like-minded with common interests and people who I could be friends with and take classes with and learn from and really be connected to. And that's what made me choose coming to Hunter, and mostly being a Roosevelt. That's the reason why I came here, was to be a Roosevelt Scholar.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Elise, we're right about the time for the event. So any last parting thoughts for our students in the room?
No, I just want to thank our students for coming out in the middle of your day when you're so busy to join us for this conversation. And you're just really generous with your time. So thank you for being here, and for Irina for setting this up. And let me just say for our accepted students, if there's more information you need, if there's questions, if you want to hop on a call, if your folks have questions, whatever I can do or our admissions team can do to help you with your decision or share information, we're only going to be delighted to hear from you. And, thanks for, coming to meet us today. This was really a pleasure.
Thank you, Elise. For the students in the room, once again, congratulations. Getting into a Roosevelt Scholar program was not easy this year. This has been one of the most competitive years at Hunter. So huge congrats on your academic accomplishments, guys. A few basic reminders. If you're interested in housing for the fall 2021 semester, you want to make sure you apply ASAP. We are offering housing. Brookdale Residence Hall will be open for the fall semester, but as a Roosevelt Scholar, you do get priority for housing. So if you're interested, you got to make sure that you sign up for housing. You want to make sure you apply. Priority deadline is coming up in about a week from now, but you will be able to apply later. But the earlier you apply, the better. You're sort of guaranteed to get ahead of the list, which is huge. If what you heard today is sort of what you think you would like for the rest of your time in college, right? For the next 4 years, you see Roosevelt as your home. All you have to do is go to your CUNY first, click that accept offer, and submit a deposit to reserve your seat in our fall 2021 class. Last but not least, if you have questions for the students, if you have questions about specific academic programs, or if you want to hear about the Roosevelt Scholar, we have plenty of students on something we call Unibuddy. So if you go to the admissions page, there's a little chat with students button. It takes you right to our students. You can look for different majors. You can look for different scholar cohorts. You can look for athletics if you're interested in being in athletics. So anything that sort of happens at Hunter, our students are there to answer any of the questions you may have. So once again, congratulations. Thank you for joining us. And we're really looking forward to meeting you guys in the fall 2021 semester. So bye, everyone. Bye.